got to get in step with people if you want to get their attention. And so when you walk down the sidewalk outside the terminal, they weren't allowed inside, but when you walk down the sidewalk, they were trained not to come directly at you because this is like a T-bone, right? This is a very hard stop. So instead they did something like a dovetail. You'd walk past them just a little bit and then they would merge with you, right? And when they merged with you, they held out their hand. What did they have in their hand? Does anybody remember? A flower, sometimes, that's all. And where did they get the flower? It was a dandelion or a wildflower they had just picked off the side of the sidewalk. But they were leveraging a technique, a psychological principle called the Law of Reciprocity. So I know some of you are taking notes today. Write this down, it's super important. The Law of Reciprocity says that when you do something nice for somebody else, they feel obligated to do something nice for you. Now, this is not a trick, it's not deception, it's not illegal, it's not immoral, it's not unethical, it's psychology. And so the Moonie would hand you a little wildflower, and then you would reflexively start digging for change, which is exactly what they wanted. And they raised millions and millions of dollars doing this. So when you get in step with your prospect or the people that you're trying to get the attention of, things work out. A better way to do that is the dovetail versus the T-bone, right? Okay, so here's the question for all of the people in the room today for a program called Getting Attention in a Noisy World. How many of you do your own marketing at your company? Hands up. Okay, I'll keep them up for just a second. I want to see who you are. Thank you. Hello, hello. And how many of you farm it out? You pay somebody to do it. Okay, that's interesting because it seemed like some of you did not raise your hand to either question. How many of you don't do any marketing? It's possible, right? It's okay. All right. So I'm going to show you some easy tips and techniques, tricks. Tricks, when I say tricks now, it's like a Penn and Teller, magician. They trick you, but nobody gets hurt. A lot of people think tricking is bad. No, tricking's fine. Just don't hurt anybody, okay? That will help you get more attention, and they're easy. A lot of these techniques are free. I'll tell you as a explanation, way up front, you have had access to these techniques this whole time. You're like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, man. You had the power to click your heels this whole time and go back to Kansas, but you haven't. And the big reason why nobody does these tricks is because they take more time than not doing the tricks. A good marketing campaign takes effort. Right, Kathy Kane?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you got to dig in. You got to truly understand what's happening. Let's take something easy like impressions. You know, McDonald's, for example. And I don't know if the number is still true, but I read one time that McDonald's has to advertise an Egg McMuffin to you 7.5 times before you actually buy one. Now, when I say you, I'm talking about the average person, 7.5 times. What can you pull from this little factoid? Well, if you're not any better at marketing than McDonald's, you're going to have to tell your people 7.5 times that your product is available or your service is available. And we fall shy of that. You know, we send out, I hear this all the time, I don't know why nobody's here today. I sent out an email. Or how about this? I don't know why nobody's here today. I sent out the same email twice. Right? And there's so many other ways to look at this. And I wanted to turn you on to this today as we talk about different ways that you can get attention in a noisy world. I mentioned that I came from, I was raised in Trenton, so my mind is discombobulated today for a couple of reasons. I just flew back from Wenatchee, Washington, where I did a leadership conference. Wenatchee, for those of you that don't know, is the Apple capital of the world. There are several Apple capitals of the world. Every country has one. Ours is apparently Wenatchee. By the way, how do we know that Wenatchee is the Apple capital of the world?
They tell you.
They told us. That's exactly right. So when you say it, it makes it so. We live in an area, in a society where if you say it enough, it becomes true. It certainly becomes true in politics when people say stuff enough. It becomes true. True. Quotation marks, right? Now here's the thing, you got to back it up. Don't just say stuff and not follow up with it. You got to back it up or your integrity's gone. So when they say Apple capital of the world, when you drive into Wenatchee, you skirt the Columbia River all the way into town there. It's halfway between Seattle and Spokane. little bit north of Yakima. And all you see are apple orchards, right? And these big cases that they harvest the apples in. When they're not using those cases, they're like little small buildings. They like Legos they put on the side of the road. I didn't know what they were at first. I've never seen it. But it's the apple capital of the world. I'm quite convinced. Do I have any proof? Not a one. Nothing. But the signs at the airport say it is. Psychology tip number 2. It's called the power of the sign. When you put it in writing, people tend to believe it. No shoes, no shirt, no service. If that's on your front door, you probably don't have to have that conversation with people because they see the sign. If they're literate, they don't come in because they believe the sign. So that's a simple example. And of course, the ultimate sign is your website, your emails. We'll talk in a minute about subject lines and how important subject lines are to your emails. You'll spend scads of time on the body of the message, checking the links, how long is it, delivery rate, all that stuff. How much time do you spend on the subject line? Because without the subject line, nobody sees the email, right? So if you want, today we can talk about crafting subject lines that work. There are about 500,000 words in the English language, not counting the derivatives, verb conjugations, gerunds, that sort of thing. And certain words sell better than others. Wouldn't you like to know which ones they are? Mm-hmm. Certain words get people to open your email. I'll show you a 7-word subject line a little bit later, 7 words. You can't use this one all the time, but it gets people to open your emails. I know because I did it. I didn't believe it when they told me it would work, but it works like a charm, man. I can use it about once a year. Are you interested?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to it. And then you see that these are all the tricks, I haven't got into the stuff that Kathy does and the marketing professionals in the room, which is taking apart the campaigns and all the metrics and how many people looked at open the page, pages on your website, how many people open the email, how many CTR, which is your click-through rate. Haven't even talked about any of that stuff yet. Okay, I want you in your notes, I want you to do a little flow chart across this way. In the left-hand side of the page, I want you to draw a megaphone. It's just a triangle. You know what a megaphone looks like, right? You can write the word megaphone if you like. But that's the first thing that you need if you want to get attention in a noisy world. You've got to have a tool, a mechanism for getting the word out. The easiest one in the world is called WOM. Anybody? Word of mouth, exactly right. It's the easiest one in the world. You see somebody in the Kroger line at Kroger, and they say, what do you do for work? And you say, I do such and such. And then the megaphone just to that person, right? But, for years I've been doing these public events, and if you come see me afterward, you ask me a question about my programs, I speak louder than you need me to speak because I know there are other people that want to hear what I have to say. I essentially make my megaphone bigger. You understand? I don't do that to irritate anybody. I hope it doesn't irritate people. But if you ask me about my business and there's a bunch of people standing around, I don't whisper it to you. I put some steak on the grill and everybody's going to hear. And if I'm talking to you after the program and somebody comes up to talk, I acknowledge them because I don't want them to leave. And then I invite them into the conversation because that increases my audience by 50%. If another person comes up, come on in. And I'll tell you, we're just talking about this. And I go right back to this person so that they don't feel like I traded them out. You see? But the average person, I don't think, thinks about this stuff. How many of you went to the district conference on Mackinac Island? Yeah. Did anybody see anybody use that technique? Because there were all these clusters of conversation. Did you see anybody mechanically, systematically pull people into the conversation? Or were they just simple confabs that happen and then they dissolve? What happens, you get interrupted by somebody and then you say, I'm done with you now, here. Or how about this? Oh, I just saw somebody that's more interesting than you. And you move over here like this, right? And that's rude. You don't want to do that. So let's make it more inclusive, bigger megaphone. The way to do this online, of course, is to have a bigger following. So you want at least 500 friends on LinkedIn because that's when you go pro on LinkedIn. If you've been in business 10 years and you don't have 500 friends on LinkedIn, you're doing something wrong. LinkedIn is a huge megaphone. And it's not just having the friends. What must you do to those 500 people? Sorry?
Connect.
You're connected already because you have 500. What's the engagement part?
You've got to talk to them, you've got to comment, you've got to react, you've got to